right, here we are in video 2 of lesson 2 and module 2. And you can see we have a problem on the board. It's also on page 15 in your book. It says, Adesh is training for a 22-mile relay race. He will run the race on a 4-person team. Each team member runs the same number of miles. How many miles will each team member run? Okay, so a relay race, you don't run it all by yourself. You run it with other people. That's what a relay is. Okay, so let's consider this problem, right? Start by reading. How many members are on each team? 4-person team. So that would be 4 people on each team. What do we know about the 4 team members? Each team member runs the same number of miles. All right. What is the total number of miles in the race? 22 miles is the total race. We will want to divide 22 miles equally among the 4 members because we're trying to find out how many miles will each, there's that keyword each, team member run. And each can mean division or multiplication. In this case, we have our 22-mile race. We're dividing it by 4, right? So what are some strategies we could use to solve this problem? So we could have a rectangle to represent each mile, right? We could take our 22 miles and then we could determine how to partition and distribute those rectangles into 4 groups, right? Take our 22, put it into 4 groups. We could use 1 sticky note for each mile and then cut it up and divide it into those 4 groups. We could do vertical form. Okay? So why don't you work on this for a minute? See what you can come up with. Use whichever strategy you want to use. Okay. So if you're going to use that strategy where you're going to draw it out, right? Either cut sticky notes or rectangles. Would it make sense to distribute the whole miles among the 4 team members first? Would that make sense to say like, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 team members, and then give them each some miles first, because then you don't have to do as much cutting. Yeah, I think that might make sense, right? So you might also think, okay, 20 divided by 4, that I could give 5 to each one, because 5 times 4 is 20, right? And then I just have 2 left over, and 2. So would they each get a half? Right? Because that would make 1, and that would make another 1. So there's my 22 miles split up evenly, right? That might be a little faster than doing all that cutting, okay? Could you do it in vertical form? And what is the quotient and remainder? So 22 divided by 4, right? 4 times 5 is 20 with 2 left over, right? And if I know my 22 are miles, right, then that means my 2 is miles. Yeah. And then I'm going to cut it into 4 parts. 2 divided by 4, right? 2 cut into 4 parts because I have 4 people. 5 and 2/4. All right. What if you came up with 22/4? Yeah, that's pretty original. 22 divided by 4, 22/4. The only problem with that is that it's kind of hard to understand, right? Like, is it more than 1 mile? Is it more than 2 miles? Right? We can see here that it's supposed to be 5.5 miles. So it's kind of hard to understand, right? Now, what about this 5 2/4? Is that okay to write it as 5 2/4? Because each of the 4 team members will run 5 miles, and that makes 20 miles. And then there's 2 miles left over, which we're dividing among 4 people. All right. So we could write it as 5 2/4, or we could write it as 5 1/2, because 2/4 is equal to 1/2, right? Okay. I can divide both of these by 2, or I can multiply both of these by 2. All right. So nice job. Okay, and then I think we just have one more thing to talk about. Make sure you have that all written down. And we need to write our our sentence. Yes, we always need to write our sentence. How many miles will each team member run? I'm just going to say person. You can say team member if you want, but it's harder for me to write with this. And I don't have the typing application on this part. Each person runs. I'm going to take the one that's the easiest to understand. 5 1/2 miles. I mean, it's less than 22 miles, but it's still quite a bit of running, right? Okay, make sure you have that written down. If not, pause me and get it written down. Okay, so then we just have one more thing to talk about. So there will only be 2 videos in lesson 2. Hurrah. Let's see. Go to our next slide, maybe. There we go. Okay, so there we go. Look at these 2 models. Here we have 3 and it's 4, right? But our last one is broken into thirds. And here we have 4 and they're all broken into thirds. And here we have 3 friends and they're each getting 1 1/3. And here we have 3 friends and they're each getting 4/3. So we have some equations to look at. I think they're going to pop up here. Nope, they're not going to pop up here. Sorry. Let's look at these equations. There we go. All right. So model A, 4 divided by 3 equals 1 1/3. 1 1/3. Model B, 4 divided by 3 is 4/3. Okay, so they're both 4 divided by 3, but we have more than one way to show it, right? And 1 1/3 is equal to 4/3. We're just looking at whether we want to split them all or we want to distribute the whole first. You see that? And then cut them into thirds, or if we're going to cut everything into thirds and distribute 1/3 at a time. Okay? Oh, right. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video. This is the last video for lesson 2. Aloha.